I should say that when I talk about tweeting, I'm not talking about this kind of tweeting. I'm talking about this kind of tweeting. So being a medievalist, I would tweet from the Middle Ages, but you may well say, why would I care about the Middle Ages? What have the Middle Ages ever done for me? Well, I think there are two reasons to be interested in the Middle Ages. One is because they're so different from us, and the other is because they're so similar to us. So let's look at the differences, the similarities, and the tweets. To start out with, they are obviously very different from us. For instance, the periodic table only had 4 elements on it. They thought you could cure disease by having the king touch you. That man is being cured of tuberculosis in the picture, allegedly. They dealt in Roman numerals, not very useful for arithmetic. So there you see the Roman numerals, which we think we're familiar with, 1, 2, 3, but then 4 is not even an IV, as we would expect, it's an I. Actually, if you look at a modern clock or a watch, you will see that actually we say I on our clocks and watches, so it's actually not that different. But they did adopt Arabic numerals halfway through the Middle Ages. There are some Arabic numerals on the right in red, and you'll see 1, 2, 3, and then 4 looks a little funny, 5 is very funny, 6, 7 is very funny. So even the numerals that we would think of as the same are not actually the same in the Middle Ages. They fought with swords. Obviously, that's a difference. And when they were done fighting with their swords, they then threw the swords into a body of water. Why did they do that? They just thought it would be beneficial somehow. So actually, when you see medieval swords in a museum exhibit, most of those come from bodies of water. There are piles of them down there. So this is a man, an archaeologist, bringing up one of the swords from bodies of water. Not only did they throw swords in bodies of water, they threw keys in bodies of water. They threw metal implements of all sorts in bodies of water. They threw coins in bodies of water. And actually, we throw coins in bodies of water. Why do we do that? We just think it's beneficial somehow. So maybe they're not all that different, actually. So let's talk about ways in which we're the same. Some of them may be unexpected. For instance, you don't usually see this in medieval pictures, but actually they had eyeglasses just as we do. There's some more medieval people in eyeglasses. And the thing is that when you have a formal picture of you or you're in a formal circumstance, you tend to take off your eyeglasses. So here, when you're being presented to the Virgin Mary, for instance, you take off your eyeglasses. This man is being presented to the Virgin Mary, and you see there, he's got his eyeglasses in his hand. Or this man is having his picture taken, and you see he's taken off his glasses for his picture. They had baby walkers. You see there the infant Jesus in a baby walker. They had cat doors. That's a genuine medieval door, and there's the cat down there. There's another medieval door with the arrow pointing to the cat door, cat hole part of it. There's another medieval cat. Like the internet, medieval manuscripts are full of pictures of cats. They had universities, so that's an obvious important similarity. And here is a picture of a medieval class. This student is asleep. And this student is texting. And you may say, hang on a minute, they didn't text in the Middle Ages? Well, I don't know. Were they very different in that regard or not? Let's think about what characterizes texting. Short messages, and the messages are in a sort of abbreviated kind of special language. So many people say, oh, text speak, decline of literacy, it's a sort of distinctive feature of texting, so much so that people have put up a periodic table of the texting abbreviations you need to know when you do it. But even people resent it so much that patriotism is, threatened when we use that kind of language. And in fact, texting and twittering have been occupying people's attention recently because it seems to be a new and maybe perilous form of communication. So the author Jonathan Franzen has said that Twitter is unspeakably irritating and that it's the ultimate irresponsible medium. The New York Times has said that there's negatives, it's frivolous, self-promotional, people say stupid things, we have attention deficit disorder when we use it. The Daily Standard just said it was the decline of Western civilization. But let's look back in time here into medieval texting. So let's think about the characteristics that medieval texting has in common with modern texting. So short messages, usually 140 characters, everyday concerns, a special kind of language. The writers often give too much information. They often write about sex. Some of them specialize in insults. And sometimes things can circulate more widely than people actually wanted them to. So how do we find these in the Middle Ages? Well, in 1955, in Bergen in Norway, over there on the left of the map, part of the medieval city burned down. So the center of Bergen, where they could not do archaeological excavations, suddenly they could, because there was nothing there. So they excavated the medieval city, and there you see the excavation. And as one guy was throwing away some sticks, he noticed that there were scratches on the stick. And he thought, what are those? And they turned out to be runes, which is a special kind of medieval writing that you do on sticks. And here's a picture of some of them. And he realized that actually there were lots and lots of rune sticks here. It had been thought that these special kinds of messages were very rare and that they were used for only certain important occasions and everything. That they knew that they had them maybe in medieval England, medieval Scandinavia, but hardly any. They found in this small section of the city over 660 rune sticks. They realized that they were an everyday medium. So what you do is, you want to send a message to somebody. Paper has not made its way to Europe yet, so you can't use paper. They write manuscripts on sheepskin, but you don't want to kill a sheep just to send a message to your friend. So you just pick up a stick from the ground, and everybody has a knife, men, women, and children all carry knives, and you slice off, make one side flat of the stick, and then you use the knife to carve letters in the stick. So there's a typical rune stick, and at the bottom you see the runic alphabet, which has been developed just for writing on these sticks, kind of like text speak, so that it's very angular. It doesn't have curves because those are hard to carve. So I want to show you some examples of medieval rune sticks and what they say. Basically what these are medieval texts. So there was one that was found in a medieval tavern, and it says, "Geetha says you should go home." There's an answer carved on the back, but it's drunken and illegible. Or, "They are both living together, Clumsy Curry and Wilhelm's wife." A little bit of medieval gossip there. And this poor guy was too shy to propose marriage in person, so he texted his marriage proposal to this woman, and he says, "It's my full desire to ask you to marry me if you don't want to be with Kolbein. Let me know what you think." We don't know what her answer was because she didn't write it on that stick. So, or "Ingeborg loved me when I was in Stavanger." I think that falls under the category of too much information. Arnie the priest wants Inga. I think this might be one of the ones that he didn't expect to go farther than. He didn't realize that 700 years later, people were still reading this text. This one, 2 sides, 2 messages. The first side says, "How did that statement go that you carved in the Church of the Cross?" And the answer says, "Ollie is unwiped behind, and he's," and I can't say it, it's too obscene what he is, but it's very obscene. And then he says, "That sounded good." Or, "I love another man's wife so much that fire seems cold to me, and I am that woman's lover." Or this one on a rib bone, took it out of his stew, carved a message on it. Now there is a huge commotion. That's in a tavern, so presumably there was a brawl. I don't know why he needed to write that there was a brawl, but why do people text that? You know, something going on here. So, same reason. Or, I would much rather visit the mead houses more often. Perhaps a sentiment not unknown to today's undergraduate. So, what do we get when we read medieval texts? We find that there is a hunger for people to communicate with each other, not with big, earth-shaking philosophical statements, but just with communication about their everyday lives. That has stayed the same for millennia. We find that it's definitely not the decline of civilization. Things don't fall apart. It knits us together. And in fact, it doesn't stop in the Middle Ages. There are forms of it from every age. In the 18th and 19th century, it was in the newspaper. People would just place little ads that would say things like, "I went to a nice party." Here are two from 1827. The first one is a man who's offended his mother, and his mother's kind of guilting him into coming home. The second one is a woman who, if she gets in touch, there's some information. Later on, in the 19th and 20th centuries, it was telegrams. We think of them now as things that announce big, important news, but people would just send telegrams saying, you know, "Oh, by the way, come at 3 and not at 4. So here are some examples. "No letter from you. What is the matter? Answer." Or this one, it looks like a written out letter, but actually the telegraph person wrote out the transmission. "Don't be too troubled. We're almost at the end." Who knows what that was about? No context survives, but just another little informal message. So, what do you get when you read texts from another century? You understand how these things reoccur again and again throughout history. You get more context to things. You get time travel. You get more perspective. You can see further. The value of the humanities is not just about the skills that you learn in powers of analysis or in attention to detail and things like that. It's also about the content of what you learn, the content that gives you that kind of perspective. The humanities are good to think with. Other centuries are sending us messages. When we study the humanities, we can read them. Thank you.